Hi there, this is Luke Eccles, the Fantasy Bro, bringing you some 2018 British Open fantasy golf content. Thank you all for joining. I'm here to give good, honest fantasy advice. I've been involved in fantasy. I want to get in the business, and I know this is a good platform to start that. I want to start with the British Open in the 2018 season. It's probably my favorite major just because it's on early in the morning and you can get up and drink your coffee and watch golf. It's definitely one of my favorite tournaments, if not my favorite major of the year. So with that, I'm going to give you my picks for the DraftKings format. Going with all the way, Dustin Johnson rates high on the Fantasy Bros model. Dustin Johnson hits in every category. I am so excited to see how far he drives the ball. I saw a couple of videos of Brandt Snedeker driving the ball 426 yards, so I think Dustin Johnson is probably going to drive it 546 yards. So I'm going Dustin Johnson all the way. I think he'll probably be in 90% of my DraftKings lineups, if not 100%. You know, I think there's enough sleepers down towards the bottom of the DraftKings list that Dustin Johnson will fit in there pretty easily if you want him to. You know, the next highest player rated I have is Justin Rose. The model rates him high. I have to say I watched him last week. Played quite a bit at the Scottish Open, and I didn't think he was playing Justin Rose's golf, but I looked and he tied for 6th and shot 13 under, so he's just a beast. I think if he hit a lot of big hooks. I think if he can get that straightened out, I mean, he's going to be in contention. Top 10 for sure, going to be in contention to win. The next up is Koepka. He's next up on the list. I like Koepka a lot. He seems like he shows up for every major. He played on the European Tour for years, so he knows how to play these courses. He knows how to play the wind. The other guy that rates high on the model, I can't say I have the best feel for him overall, is Paul Casey. Paul Casey, the last time we seen him, he was having a meltdown in the final round of the tournament that looked like he was far and away the leader going into the 4th round, and he just kind of blew it. So it's hard to see where mentally his head is at. Molinari, Molinari tee to green has been amazing. I've watched him play, the tournament. He dominated, and then last weekend at the Deer, and I mean, just his golf game's amazing. For me, I don't have him rated as high as some of the other players, Dustin Johnson, Justin Rose, Stenson, but I do have him up there. I think it's gonna be interesting to see how he transitions from playing the U.S. courses back to the British Open courses. he's a European player, so he's always played over there. So it's just kind of weird to think that it would be kind of a reverse transition for him. He's a solid player, though. Uh, I would like to see his ownership percentage because I can't really imagine if it will be high or low because of the reasons I talked about. So the next player that rates really high is Patrick Reed. I know Reed obviously won the Masters and surprised everybody. The next thing I'll say about Patrick Reed is it seems like he really shows up early to the majors. He's really major focused this year. I really don't know for sure, but it seems like he's been at Carnoustie and probably has several rounds there. I know before Augusta they talked about him and his caddy just did an insane amount of work pre-Masters and it worked out for him. So they're replicating that same strategy that worked for him there at the British Open. So Reed is a contender. He wants to win. That guy's always got a chip on his shoulder. I have Alex Noren up there. Personally, I like Noren. I think he's going to have a good week. He doesn't have the best tee to green stats or scrambling stats, which the model was high on this week. So he didn't rate quite as high on the model, right around, mid-round player. But I would still trust him in a DraftKings lineup. Hendrik Stenson ranked high. I mean, he was as high on the model as Justin Rose and Dustin Johnson, just with his track record in the British Open, and also his play of late and his past history. I mean, he is way up there, and at $8,200, Stenson's like a no-brainer. I feel like in my DraftKings lineup anyway. So, moving on to there's 4 players right here in a row that I really like a lot. I've started a lot of DraftKings lineup with the core right here of Leishman, Grace, Hatton, Poultier, and then you got Louis Oosthuizen is right there in the mix too. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with any of those guys. Leishman, I would say my gut's a little iffy on him just because I haven't seen him play the best as of late. But Brandon Grace has amazing course history at the British Open and has been playing pretty well lately. Tyrrell Hatton, watched him play last week quite a bit at the Scottish Open, and he's ready to win. He's a solid player. He kind of faded on the weekend, but he looks like he could be a contender. Poultier, yeah, Ian Poultier, maybe that's more maybe I'm trying to say it like with a British accent, but he's a gamer. I mean, he seems like now that his putting's back on track, he's in there in every tournament and every major. So definitely gotta have some confidence in Poultier and put him in the lineup. Louis Oosthuizen has been, one of my favorite players to watch throughout the years. He just seems like he loves playing. I know he's kind of an oddball. He's got a farm, and that's something he does when he goes home, and he doesn't play all the time, but when he plays, he usually shows up big in majors. He's got a British Open to his credit, so I wouldn't hesitate to put Louis in your DraftKings lineup. So moving a little bit down the list further to some lesser dollar players on the list, as Patrick Cantlay comes up high on the model. Cantlay is not typically a player that I would put in my DraftKings lineup. Just don't have the utmost confidence in him. But he comes up high on the model with, some really, really solid play of late. But I've seen him fade on the weekends, and I'm not sure he's quite ready to win yet. Maybe he's ready to prove me wrong. Getting to a player that I like a lot as a sleeper, Hao Tong Lee. He's been in contention for every major. He was right there in contention last year for the British Open. He was in contention last week for the Scottish Open. He doesn't really hit on the scrambling or tee to green stats, maybe because he doesn't play in the U.S. as much to get rated high on those stats. But I know he has a game to win a major, and seeing his success in the past and last week has, rated him about middle of the pack on the model, but my gut feel is that he's going to be right there, maybe top 10. I'm looking at Hao Tong Lee. Next up is Zach Johnson, the old zipper job, the old ZJ. I mean, I've been a fan of ZJ for a long time, but he is rated tops on the model. He's my tops player, $7,200. I'm then, crazy as it sounds, put him in every lineup. I mean, I gotta stick with the model. It's been successful for the 5 out of the last 6 weeks, so I'm putting ZJ in the lineup. He's my top player rated on the model, and with his scrambling, he's always one of the top players at scrambling stats. And his record at the British Open is just amazing. The last week, John Deere Classic, he always plays that event before he comes over to the British Open. His final round was amazing. I think he shot 63 or 64, and he was on it. So, I'm all in on Zach Johnson this weekend. I also got Tony Finau rated high. He's a tier 2 player for me. Finau's game has been ascending. I think he's got the game to win. I think if he can putt consistently, he can win a major. I'm rooting for Finau. I think he's due for a top 10, top 15, probably top 15. I don't quite think he's quite ready to win yet, just because gotta solidify that putter, make it a little more consistent. So the next player, Webb Simpson. Webb's been solid this year. He's been putting well. Everything's kind of fallen into place. He's got good scrambling stats as well. So moving on to a couple other players. Here's a couple 3 players from Europe that play on the European PGA Tour that are lower dollar value on DraftKings that I really like a lot as sleepers. Eddie Pepperell played really well last weekend. Has good scrambling and tee to green stats over on the European Tour. Eddie Pepperell, $7,000. The other guy that just jumps off the page is Matthew Southgate. Matthew Southgate has got tied for 6th, tied for 12th in the last 2 British Opens. He played really well last weekend. He was top 15 last weekend at the Scottish Open. So Matthew Southgate rated really high, tier 2 player on the model as well. Another player I've been getting to watch a lot of on the European Tour, wake up early, drinking my coffee, watching the European Tours, Alexander Bjork. He's just a solid player. Looks like a cool dude be fun to have a beer with. But definitely at 200 to 1, I'm going to be putting a little bit of cash on Alexander Bjork and then have him in a DraftKings lineup or two, because for $6,800, I think he's a good value. Ooh, Ryan Moore, another guy that I'm excited that came up high on the model. I mean, Ryan Moore's been solid at the British Open. He's got a great record there. His scrambling stats are 7th on the PGA Tour right now, and he's high, top 10 player in scrambling year after year on PGA Tour. That was one stat that I put into the model. I think that's important, scrambling at this PGA Tour event. But Ryan Moore, $6,700. Don't hesitate to put him in your lineup. Another guy I like a lot is Stewart Cink. Seen Stewart Cink play some good golf lately. Saw him hit a hole-in-one at the FedEx, playing with Phil. He got top 6th place the last time that they played at the British Open in Carnoustie. So that's an amazing stat. And at $6,600, he's a tier 3 player on the model. So definitely as a sleeper, he fits right in there. So gonna go back up. There's some players that I didn't mention that I kind of want to go through. Jordan Spieth, kind of off Jordan Spieth this week. I think he's kind of in his own head putting. He won last year though and wasn't playing super up until then. Last year he was going back and forth, so he's a player that can win anytime. But right now, I just don't have enough faith in him to put money on him. Justin Thomas, he's playing well. I mean, I think he's rated high in every major this year, but he just hasn't showed up. I think some of the success last year, maybe he's just pushing a little too hard, and I know he wants to win, and I know he works his butt off, but just thinking that maybe he just needs to let the game come to him instead of trying to push it so much. Rahm, I'm rooting for her to win. I think he's going to win a major eventually. Everybody talks about his fiery attitude. I think it does make a difference in one form or fashion, especially at a course like this when, you're going to have shots that hit the green and you think are going to stick and just roll off the back and you end up, double bogeying a hole. I think it really makes a difference in these events. Fleetwood, I can't blame you if you play Fleetwood. He just didn't have very good British Open stats, British Open course history that agreed with the model, so he didn't rate very high. He's got an unbelievable tee to green game, and he's definitely one of the best players in the world. He just didn't rate high on the model, and yeah, so you gotta fade some guys. Sergio, haven't seen Sergio play in quite a while, play good in quite a while. Sergio had good course history with British Open courses. He was amazing. 2nd place last time they played at Carnoustie. But, I haven't seen him play good golf in quite a while, so I'm off him this week. Tiger, there's nobody I want to see win more again, or nobody I'd rather see win this tournament than Tiger. I think he's really got a little bit of work left to do to get his driver into play to compete with some of these other guys, because, they're putting out there real well, and when Tiger hits a good one, he gets it out there with all of them, but he's got to do it more consistently, and then I definitely think he can win a major if he can stay healthy. So, Jason Day is awesome golfer. I love watching Day. When his game's on, he can just completely dominate. Um, he's been inconsistent lately. I don't think he's been hitting his driver as consistently, kind of like Tiger. Same kind of boat. If they when they rip it, they just rip it 350 down the middle. But when they miss it, it doesn't do them any favors. It makes for bogeys and tough pars. So kind of gonna stay away from those two guys this week. I don't think I've talked about Rory yet, and Rory's second from the top. If I have, I apologize, but he's rated as a tier 2 player on the model. You can't hesitate to go with Rory. Have seen him play maybe 2 good rounds and it won him a golf tournament, but other than that, he's been kind of shaky in my opinion. So, jumping back down to Matsuyama, I just don't trust Matsuyama right now. I like watching him play. He just is not consistent at all. He might have one good round of tournament, and then he's just inconsistent the rest of the tournament. I think he'll struggle to make the cut this week. I guess after saying that, he's probably gonna win, but I'm not on him. I'm gonna fade Matsuyama. So the next guy I want to talk about is Phil. I think Phil's kind of in his own head right now with the Mizzle and Main stuff, and then, with the running putt at the U.S. Open, and then this last debacle with the penalty stuff. I just kind of think Phil's ready for the senior tour. I've enjoyed watching him over the years, but yeah, he's kind of getting out there a little bit. He was playing some good golf for a while, but he's just kind of trying pretty hard to compete with the younger guys, and he's getting attention in all the wrong ways right now. So Bubba never seems to play very well at the Open. Gonna fade him. Cooch, haven't seen him play all that great this year either, so staying away from him. Russell Knox, hometown, I guess he's from Carnoustie or whatever. He's burnt me enough in the past that I'm staying far away from Knox. In DeChambeau, I was on DeChambeau for the British Open for the last month since he's won, and then last week he comes up and withdraws from the John Deere Classic, and with a shoulder injury, so it's hard to understand right there if he's just wanted to get to Carnoustie to start working on his British Open game, or if his shoulder's really bothering him. So with all that being said, then a fade DeChambeau. Rafael Cabello Bayo, I wouldn't argue with you if you played him. I definitely feel like Bello, and then the guy right under him, Peters. I like those guys. They have great golf games. I think they love top 15s, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as those guys, you put them in your lineup, I think you got a good chance of getting a top 20, top 15 out of those guys for sure. Whether they can win, I don't think that I think they can, but I just don't think that they quite have the game to. So, the next guy up, Luke List, Schauffele, didn't stay away from those guys. Effie Barnrat, my gut wants to pick Effie Barnrat. I think he's got a top 10 in him. Just didn't rate very high on the model. He played great last weekend at the Scottish Open, so he's got a game that translates to the link-style courses of, Scotland. I just didn't rate high on the model, so gonna fade him. Berger is another one of those guys that, Berger's competed in the majors this year. Other than that, he really hadn't played very good golf. He's got some past history at the Open, so he is someone that could do well, I'm going to stay away from them. So, I think that's all the players I wanted to go over. You know, we're Fantasy Bros Sports. It's bro_fantasy is my Twitter handle. Want to get a podcast, get a YouTube channel started. You know, I think I can help people be successful at fantasy. So thank you all for listening.